At this time, I'll call the Board of Adjustments and Appeals for February 28th, 2018 to order. At this time, would you please join me as we pledge allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. First thing up, we're going to call roll for the moment. Yes, please.
Chairman Taylor.
Here.
Vice Chairman Shahayev. Member Hunley. Member Johnson.
Here.
Aldermember Smith Rodriguez.
Here.
Aldermember William Kilpatrick.
Here.
All right. Well, we do have 4. We anticipate a 5th being here shortly, so maybe by the time we get all the preliminaries done, there'll be a 5th one.
Mr. Chairman, before
Yes.
we take any action with the 4 present members, I'd like to swear in the new alternate member, Kilpatrick, if you would join me at the podium.
Thank you.
I
I,
state your name,
William Kilpatrick,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support,
that I will support,
protect, and defend
protect, and defend
the
the
Constitution
Constitution
and government of the United
and government of the United
States and the state of Florida
and the state of Florida
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
domestic or foreign,
domestic or foreign,
and that I will bear true faith,
and I will bear true faith,
loyalty, and allegiance
loyalty, and allegiance
to the same,
to the same,
and that I am entitled
and I am entitled
to hold office
to hold office
under the Constitution,
under the Constitution,
that I will faithfully perform
that I will faithfully perform
all of the duties
all of the duties
of the office of the alternate member of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals
of the alternate member of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals
of the City of
of
Titusville,
the city of Titusville,
on which I am about to enter.
which I am about to enter,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, you're
Thank you.
officially now an alternate member of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, and we can continue with our quorum this evening.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you.
And welcome back. Glad to have you back. All right. Let's see. First order, has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes, or are there any corrections or anything that need to be added to the minutes?
No.
Seeing none, all those approve the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. Now it's time for a speech. Okay. All persons who anticipate speaking at any public hearing must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located on the table at the rear of the council chamber, or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the procedures adopted in Resolution Number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second, and those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. A witness may make a brief rebuttal. An applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and be retained by the city. And if you have those, please submit them to the recording secretary. Chairman confirms that all the items have been properly advertised, staff?
Yes, they have.
All right, thank you. Have any members visited or spoken with members in the public regarding these items that we'll be reviewing tonight? Yes? No? All right, seeing no objection, We have no consent, old or new business. Um, Since we are short one, I will make this statement. Or you want to make the statement about the four?
I'll read the statement for the board
Thank
and
you.
the members of the public listening and the applicants here. It is your choice to proceed this evening with 4 members present. There are 5 members that could be here to vote upon any item that's before them. For the purpose of transacting business at any regular meeting, 4 members shall constitute a quorum, so that's required for the minimum persons present to do business. And an affirmative vote of 4 members shall be required to pass on any matter, except that an affirmative vote of 3 members shall suffice to pass on a motion to deny a request for a variance, which means that all 4 members must agree to grant this variance that is before them tonight for each item.
So as applicants, if you're here, you have a choice of, if I understand correct, delaying till the next meeting for 5 members or going forward with 4. So on the first request on Elm Terrace, do you wish to proceed?
That's myself. Yeah, I'll just speak from the podium, please.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, we can proceed.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. Just so to clarify to the applicants that with having 5 members, they could receive a vote of 3 to 2, in other words. Is that correct? Was because we have a quorum of only 4 right now, it must be a unanimous vote.
No, an affirmative vote of 4 members is required regardless of how many people are
Thank you.
here.
Okay. Then Linwood Avenue, may I have your choice of accepting the 4 of us or delaying?
I'll continue.
Continue. All right, thank you, sir. All right, so we'll start out with variance number 2018, 1517 Elm Terrace. Staff, if you will enlighten us, please.
The variance before you tonight is 2-2018 for 1517 Elm Terrace. The request is to allow a 6-foot-high fence in the front yard setback. This property is zoned R1B, which is a single-family zoning district. It requires a 25-foot front yard setback for any principal structures. And in that setback, a fence can be no higher than 4 feet. And so the applicant is requesting a variance to allow a fence to be 6 feet within that setback. So I'll give you a brief description of the application and a report here. The future land use is low-density residential, and again, the zoning is R1B, single-family, medium-density, and so are all of the properties surrounding this particular lot. Lot characteristics. The parcel is located at the end of a cul-de-sac, or actually at the corner. It's got a cul-de-sac at the corner of a turn. I'll show that to you on the zoning map. There is approximately 35 feet of frontage on Elm Terrace, and the property is approximately 138 feet at its deepest point. The property is 7,400 square feet, and the width and area do not meet the minimum standards for the R1B zoning district. The minimum width in the R1B zoning district is 75 feet, and the minimum lot size is supposed to be 7,500 square feet. So I'll briefly describe the powers of the Board of Adjustment, and I'll do this just for this case. I won't repeat it again for the second case. So you have the power to grant a variance based on whether the application or the variance request here meets the following criteria. That there are special conditions and circumstances that exist which are peculiar to the property, to the land, to the building involved in this request. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Granting the variance request will not confer upon the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance to other lands, buildings, or structures in the same zoning district. The literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district. The variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the building or structure. The granting of the variance will preserve the spirit of the ordinance, remain in harmony with its general purpose and intent, and in granting the variance, public safety and welfare must be assured. In no case shall the granting of the variance result in a change of use. That's not an issue here. The use is consistent with the zoning. So I'll briefly describe my analysis here. The applicant received a violation notice in April 2017 from the code enforcement staff for erecting the fence without a permit. The applicant submitted a permit application on May 4th of that same year. Permit was issued on July 19th to erect a 6-foot-high fence with one gate, and the permit stated that a maximum height of 4 feet in that 25-foot front yard setback was only allowed. The applicant is requesting a variance to erect it to allow that fence to be 6 feet. The detached single-family home was constructed in 1963, which is a year just prior to when zoning was enacted in the city. The building permit and inspector's record from 1983, which we were able to retrieve from our records, indicated that a 6-foot fence was erected in the rear and side yards, and a 4-foot fence was erected in the front yard. A 2011 street-level image that we looked on Google Maps showed a 4-foot chain-link fence in the front yard. The purpose of the fence height that we believe is a limitation to maintain a continuous aesthetic that is harmonious with the character and scale of the surrounding neighborhood. The height standard also prevents what we call a bunker style or bunker appearance with high walls or fences located near streets. There appear to be options available to the applicant that will bring the variance to a minimum or to at least eliminate the variance request. We couldn't find specific conditions or circumstances that were to this lot that would prevent the applicant from meeting the literal intent of the code. And so based on that, those findings, we recommend denial of the variance to allow a 6-foot fence in the front yard. Although the lot is irregular in shape, the lot conditions do not prevent the applicant from meeting the intent of the code. A 4-foot fence existed in the front yard as far back as 1983. Granting the variance request will confer upon the applicant special privilege denied by the ordinance to neighboring properties. And we don't believe the variance is the minimum necessary to make possible reasonable use of the land. A 6-foot fence can be erected to enclose the side and rear yards, and a 4-foot fence can be used to enclose the front yard. The variance violates the intent of the ordinance. And what we mean by that is that the intent of the fence height standard is to maintain an aesthetic continuity of structures in harmony with the surrounding neighborhood. I'm just going to refer you to a few exhibits. On page 23 of your packet, I'm sorry, let me try that again.
Am I allowed to see what you're showing?
You should have received the same packet in mail and by email.
I didn't get a packet.
You should have received a packet in mail and by email.
I have an email that told me about the hearing, and that was it.
Okay. There may be a copy here. Yeah, there's a copy of the packet in the back as well. Yeah. I apologize. On page 23 of your packet, you'll see a copy of the survey that was submitted to us with the application. You can see the lot dimensions, the lot layout. It does have, it's at a curve. The frontage is at a curve of a cul-de-sac. It's about 35 feet. And then the lot itself is about 183 feet at its deepest point. Or 138 feet. And then you'll see highlighted, kind of in a darker shade, along the property boundary where the fence is being proposed. But you'll also see on the top corner of the lot, the number 25, that indicates the setback. And so that's in that area, and then on the side of the property, and then the area along the front of the property is where the fence was erected to be 6 feet. That's what the applicant is requesting a variance to. There are several photographs that were submitted with the application by the applicant. Starting on page 32 of your packet, you'll see some photographs that were submitted by the applicant, I believe as part of the evidence originally when this was brought before the Code Board.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on page 34 of your packet, you'll also see evidence that was submitted by the applicant that shows I guess an image from a computer screen of the zoning on the property, and she highlighted an area yellow. on that page. That's page 34 of your packet. And so she's indicating that the property is at the end or corner of a cul-de-sac, which is at a turn for Elm Terrace. You'll see the same thing on page 35 of your packet. There are additional photographs that were submitted with the application on page 39 of your packet. On page 50 of your packet, you'll see probably the best image really of the fence that's currently there. It is a wood fence. And that's what it looks like from the street. And then page 53, you'll see some more clearer images as well that we took from the street. So with that, I'll try and answer any questions you have about this application. And the applicant obviously is here to answer any questions as well.
So from these pictures, the fence is already there at 6 feet?
Yes, sir.
So that's also solid where the driveway is too, not a, I mean, when that gate shuts, it's a solid, it's completely enclosed, right?
Yes.
And the permit did state that it was only to be a 4-foot in that 25-foot frontage and across the front, 35 feet, right?
I had built the fence before I got the permit.
Just not yet. We haven't opened it to the public. I'm sorry.
The permit that was issued recently,
Well, I mean, okay, yes.
there was a permit for a fence that was issued recently, but it did have a notation on it that the fence can be no higher than 4 feet in the front setback.
Okay.
So the permit was issued, but it had a condition. So in other words, the fence that you see here now was not approved as part of that permit.
So this is what was cited on the original violation.
Correct.
Okay.
I can add some further detail to that if you'd like.
Certainly.
The code enforcement matter was initiated in April 2017, and the applicant came to the city for a permit after the code enforcement matter was initiated. The permit was issued with the specifics that you read and stated, that the height must be 4 feet in this front yard setback. And after that time, a notice of violation was sent to the owner because of a failure to comply with the code and the terms of the permit. The case was processed through the code enforcement time schedule and was initially presented to the code enforcement board. At the first hearing, the applicant stated she was interested in pursuing a variance. At the second hearing, she had been scheduled to appear before you for this request, and the case has been continued by the code enforcement board and will be reheard after this meeting at the first meeting in March for their determination based on what this board decides.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I can point you to page 59 of your packet, and that's a copy of the permit that was issued.
59?
59 of your packet.
Okay. And that was last July. Okay.
That's correct.
All right, are there any other questions of staff before we open this up to the public? Yes.
If the fence was erected an additional 2 feet out on the front, or 2 feet back, because they're only saying there's only a 2 feet difference, 23 feet to 25 feet, right? Is that what I'm understanding? I'm reading the
No.
applicant's notes, which I guess I should ask the applicant.
Oh, that's the side.
The fence is 23 feet from the easement? Is that accurate?
I'd have to leave it to the applicant to explain that.
Okay, I'll wait.
All right. Seeing no other questions for staff, we'll open it up to the public at this time, and our first card is?
I don't have one for that one.
Did you not hear me say you had to fill out a card to speak?
I just didn't want, I didn't know if I needed to do it right this moment.
Yes, ma'am. Staff?
Yeah, quick question, Brad. It may be in here and I may not have seen it. I'm just curious the location of the surrounding homes on either side of this property, where they are in relationship to this fence, actually. In other words, is this fence noticeably in front of those properties?
When I visited the property, yes, I thought it was. The neighboring house that's immediately adjacent to the property on the south side appeared to me to meet the setback. It was pretty far back from the street. And you could see that the fence on this property it goes down the entire length of the property to the street. So yes, it appeared to me that the other property was
I was
meeting
just curious because the lot's such an irregular shaped lot, and the front yard is relatively small, width-wise.
Yeah, the frontage is 35 feet, and that is less than the minimum for this for the zoning district.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, for Jennifer. I said yes, Jennifer Gagan? Gagan?
Jennifer Gagan, 1517 Elm Terrace, Titusville, Florida 32780. So a couple things. You guys had some questions. Back reference, I had replaced a fence that got damaged during Hurricane Matthew. And that's how all of this started. When that hurricane occurred, I was working with the homeowners insurance company and did a loss thing with them and got the money to redo my fence. So in the time of redoing that fence to build a new fence, all the roots have grown out so much from the pine trees and stuff that are on that property. We had a very difficult time trying to find locations where we could actually put posts in the front part of the residence where the driveway is, which is one of the reasons why it extended out to the point where it was. Before I did put the fence up, I spoke with all the neighbors, the homeowners that were next to me and adjacent to me and across the street, and everybody was fine with the plan of what I was going to do. I haven't had any complaints from anybody. I haven't had anybody, everybody said it's fine, they love it. So with that, the big issue is that house was actually the mother-in-law quarters to the residents on Bell Terrace, which actually I think you guys have a picture that you can see on the survey. Let me see which one will show you it the best.
Page 23 of your packet is the survey.
Actually, I think if you look on page 31, that lot 5 there is actually a Bell Terrace. That is the primary home. That my house was built as like a mother-in-law's quarter and then eventually was sold off and zoned as a single residence home. Because of that, the layout of the home was never meant to be on Elm Terrace. So the front of my house actually faces the back of their home. So they have a 6-foot fence that separates our property. So when I built the gate and stuff, I kept it under the height of their fence. To, keep it where it looked decent and wasn't, much higher than anybody else's. Because of the issue with the way the layout is in the cul-de-sac, it's actually the back of my house. When you're driving down the road, you see my backyard, which is why the fence runs at the height against lot 7. That's why it's 6 foot all the way there, because that's actually the rear of my residence. My front door, is right where that red mark is where my front door is. So because of that, it makes it difficult because that is the back of my house. And that was one of the reasons when I talked with the code board before about some unique circumstances, just because of the general layout of the home. It was never meant to be on Elm Terrace. It just, when they, sold it, they put a driveway there and put it on Elm Terrace. So with that, that's one of the reasons that I had asked for the variance. And, when I built it, I didn't know about the 4-foot thing. So it's not that I had gotten a permit and they had told me it before. It was already after the fact. And I was working with the homeowners, and I didn't know that I had to have a permit. So I went and applied for the permit, and that's when they said, well, it's got to be less than 6 foot. And I said, well, what can I do to not have to redo my whole fence? And they said, we can go through this process. So that's why I'm here today. I had a lot of issues with foot traffic from Elm Terrace cutting through my yard into that lot 9 to get to Park Avenue. There's an elderly woman that lives there, and she's quite satisfied with the fact that we no longer have that foot traffic now cutting through our properties. So that was another reason. The other thing is now that that fence is there, we have lighting on all the posts along the whole side of that fence and the driveway, so that when it's raining and it's dark, you can't see that turn. There's only one street light, and it's at the corner, the south corner of that lot 20, so it's not illuminated. Well, with my fence now, with the lighting, you can actually see the turn in the road. And there's been accidents from people not negotiating that turn, and actually just recently we had one that they hit the palm tree on lot 7 there and had some major injuries and stuff because they didn't negotiate the turn at night. So I've put in, you guys should have the request I put in with lots of other reasons why, but those were the primary things, was safety, but also just because the layout of the home, it made it very difficult to put a fence back where it was. With all the trees growing, there's just too many roots. So I did the best I could to try and keep it, where it's aesthetically looks nice and also isn't. And it's not in it doesn't block anybody's view to the road. Lot 7, they have their entire view. 4, 9, 5, he still has that little corner spot where he's put a fence up the whole way there that matches so that it's blocked. So it's not blocking anybody's view either. I think you guys have a
Well,
question.
may I ask a question too? You said you were replacing a fence. Was it a 6-foot fence previously?
So one portion of it was
No, I'm talking about the front portion that we're in.
Yes, the one portion in the front was 6 foot.
What portion?
So where actually there's pictures of the previous fence on page 32. That was the 6-foot fence that went towards, from the lot 5, that went all the way almost across half of my driveway. And then the one half didn't have a fence. And then there was that 4-foot chain link that split up my lot from 7 and mine. And there's still a piece of the other part of the 6-foot fence that is still there. that I did not take down because of all this starting. I'm trying to see if I can find a picture that you guys can kind of see it in. So if you look at page 51, where it says that private property sign, that's actually part of another 6-foot fence where I built my 6-foot fence in between those two 6-foot fence. So I went behind that first 6-foot fence and in between the second fence. So that with having a gate, my driveway is very slanted, and that was a middle point where I could actually still have a functional gate where it would open and close. The other thing is in order for me to have the gate, I can't have it swing open towards the road because of that slant. So to have it swing in towards the house, it had to also be far enough where I could actually still drive into my driveway. So I made sure that it was as close as I could get it to where it swings open and doesn't hit a car, and I can back in and out.
Okay, so you're actually, when your fence is closed, you are in the radius of the cul-de-sac officially.
When it's closed,
Yeah, when you have the gate closed, from what we see here, the radius that they've drawn here, you are inside the radius. I'm looking on.
of that little curve on the survey you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. And like I said, I didn't know about any of this stuff when I built the fence. I wish I had, because we wouldn't all have to be here today.
Yeah, fences do require permits
I learned
everywhere.
that. It was my first home, so I didn't know. And it was my first hurricane. So I thought dealing with the homeowner's insurance was what you did. I didn't realize that there was all these other things that you have to follow in suit with too.
Okay. Well, do any other members have a question of this witness? No? No questions? All right, thank you very much. There are no other cards to be spoken on this one?
No, sir.
All right, then we will close the public hearing at this time and bring it back for any follow-up questions you might have of staff. All right, none?
What I'm trying to clarify is that 25-yard setback, if this was 25 feet, if this fence was moved in another 2 or 3 feet back, it could be 6 feet in height?
No, no.
No,
Where
the
was
set,
I'm trying to figure out where the old fence was that she was mentioning was already 6 foot.
well, the old fence, I don't know when that was put up, and I don't know if that was put up. Okay, so,
Okay.
and I don't know if it was put up as part of when it was joined, when that lot was joined with another lot at one point.
Right.
And that's another thing, the history of how this lot got subdivided is not clear either. What we could find in the permit history was that there was a chain link fence, or as far as what we saw on a 2011 Google image, but we found in there was a permit, and I think I have it in part of your record as well, that we took a snapshot of from our records, was that there was a permit for a fence, but it wasn't for 6 feet. I mean, that was back in 1983.
Okay.
The setback is measured from the property line back. So the house has to be built at that setback line or further back. And so a fence, if it's located within that setback distance from the property line, can't be higher than 4 feet. That's basically what the code says.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Well, then I bring it back for a recommendation or a motion, please. We don't recommend, we make motions.
Just, I guess the thing that strikes me about is two things about this particular property. I mean, this is just an observation. It really does, because of the way the house is situated and where the front door of the house is, it really almost seems as if this is the side of the house instead of the front of the house. I realize from city standpoint and ordinances and whatever, it's a front yard regardless, but the house is situated in a very peculiar fashion. And the front door, as the applicant stated, faces actually what would be considered a side yard. That notwithstanding, I'm still, I mean, it is a front yard, I guess, legally, it has to be considered that. The 6-foot fence that was the existing one that you have a picture of on 32 that was sort of like partially down, we don't know how long that was there, right?
From the lady who lives from the neighbor who lives at the house behind me, she said she's lived there as long as that, before the house was built.
Okay, so that is a neighbor's fence?
Well, so hold on, I'll show you. On that one picture we looked at earlier. So the lady who lives on lot 9 on page 31, she told me she's lived there before my house was ever built. And the people who owned that lot 5 owned like 11, 16, 4, a bunch of these homes, and also mine. And then they had built a work shed, I guess, but then turned it into a house and then rezoned it and split it off and sold it. So she had told me that fence had been up since like the 80s. And it was, I mean, I don't doubt it. It was old.
Yeah.
It was very old.
A little, at least from my standpoint, a little bit part of what I'm confused about is, and I guess this is for staff, on the 4-foot section, are we only talking the very front of the house, or does that also include the side 6-foot sections?
That area from the front plane face of the house going forward, that's the setback we're concerned about.
That 25 feet right there. Right.
So even that fence along...
So it's the entire corner?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about the fence that's on the side of the side of the property that goes down the side of the property to the street, if it's located forward the face of the house, that would be located inside the front yard setback.
Right.
That would have to be no higher than 4 feet according to the code.
Okay.
Section right there. Okay,
Okay, thanks.
thank you. Do I have a motion? I can't make one.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I did mention to the applicant that to ask for options. For example, if the applicant feels that you're going to be making a decision in one particular way that may not be favorable to her, that she may ask, or maybe you could offer to her to consider withdrawing the application or amending it. That would allow some more time to maybe work a resolution to this by your next meeting, maybe. Otherwise, obviously, she could certainly ask you to go ahead and make your decision, but I did inform her that that would be final.
That seems like a desirable, from my standpoint, because there are some situations because of the situation of the house and the irregular lot size that does seem to be a little bit of a special case here. So I would think if she were willing to, if the applicant were willing to work a little bit further with the city on something that could maybe get a little closer to meeting the intent of the ordinance.
If you ask the applicant to consider requesting to amending the application or amending the application,
Yeah.
I would ask as staff if there was any recommendations from you as to what we can negotiate or talk to the applicant about. Any kind of proposals that you might have or any issues that we've overlooked. So any direction from you would be really helpful on that.
I guess my biggest problem is the 6 foot across the very front on the cul-de-sac. It does make it, as you mentioned, a bunker style. The side yard, to me, is not as important as right in the very front. But I do find the 6 foot across the front is obsessive. I don't know how the others feel, so.
Yeah, that's kind of why I was asking about the extent to which we were talking about lowering. In other words, was a 4 foot applicable only to the very front part of the fence, or also down to the, and
Right now,
so you answered no, that wasn't the case. So, but I'm kind of the same opinion. I'm thinking that my feeling is that that 4 foot is what's needed in the very front of the house. The side part of the fence that's 6 feet high currently, I'm less inclined to want to think that that needed to be dropped to 4 feet as well.
If I may, please, I'd like to refer you to page 52 of your packet, the photographs that staff took of the fence. So just want to clarify, you're talking about just that portion of the fence that is adjacent to and facing the neighbor. The entire length of the property that's facing the neighbor is where you are seeing a possibility for allowance. Whereas the portion of the fence that is facing the street, it sounds like that you're looking for maybe bringing that down. That should probably meet the code. So if you did that, just know that you would have a 4 foot fence next to a 6 foot high fence right there at the street.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. Any input from either one of y'all as to suggestions?
No, I'm in general agreement with the assessment.
Well, does it have to be brought back, or can we make this recommendation and she agree with it and go forward with that?
I mean, if you want to, I believe that you can make a decision that you would grant the variance to only a portion of this request. You could certainly do that. And it would not, and then the other portion or part of this request would not be approved.
Correct.
That would be dependent upon your motion.
Well, then I have a question for the applicant. Would you please come to the mic, please? Would you be open to suggestions from us, or, in other words, is it all or none on your part?
I am open to suggestions. Like when this first started, I'm willing to work with everybody. It's just to dismantle the whole fence and do everything all over again is what I just don't want to have to do. That's my biggest thing. It was a big task to get done, and it's more money that I can't really afford, and paying the money to apply for the variance was a lot in itself, so I'm willing to do what I can to get it taken care of.
All right. Thank you. Do you have a question?
I want to go far outside the box here for a second.
Okay. Okay. Got a box.
In listening to staff's comment of the corner at the street being 4 foot and 6 foot, I would think that would also look peculiar. And if we're talking about aesthetics and bunker style and things like that, that is also problematic. Here's the part outside the box. Way outside the box, so nobody laugh. If it starts at 4 foot, there are fences typically made of, I guess, concrete probably, that do take a step up until they get to their regular height, which would make the corner of the street look normal. And then when you get a little further back, it would be the full 6 foot of privacy. Kind of like on the highway where they have those big concrete walls that kind of go down a little bit. I know that might be a little peculiar as well, but it would kind of solve two problems.
Yeah, I can see your point as far as coming out with a 6 foot butt ending and then dropping to the 4.
Right.
So the one, like I had discussed with them before, the code, the fence is braided. So where every post is, there's a 8-foot piece, and then the two below, but up at the post, and then the one below it is a full piece centered. So if we talk 2 feet, I have to dismantle 4 feet and then put it back. So that was one of my big things, is I'm pretty much have to dismantle the entire fence, or 3/4 of it, for adjustments, which is a big job. So the front isn't as an issue because that's not braided like the side is. I just am trying to look at it how you would make the step-ups. I guess maybe adding another post is what I could try to do, to be able to screw in the step-up post to go up to the 6 foot to make it more aesthetic. Because I don't really see how I'd be able to do it without another post in between those two, that corner one and then the one behind the pine tree. Which, I mean, I can do it, it just, I
Well,
have to try
rather
it.
than us just passing something other, may I suggest that you work with staff, and now that you kind of know what we are leaning toward, as Counselor recommended, asking to be delayed till next meeting, and y'all come back with your step process or whatever you decide with for that process. Is that something that would work with you? To be able to work with staff and do that then?
Yeah.
Now that you kind of know how we're feeling
Yeah,
toward.
yeah.
Certainly work with the applicant,
Okay.
with that direction.
All right.
So then we would basically table it?
That's what we're talking about?
We would discontinue the application, and it would just be brought back to you with a minimum variance request.
Okay.
If that is the board's direction, and in order to save costs on advertising, I would ask the applicant if the March meeting date meets her schedule, and that we make a motion that the item be tabled to the date certain for the March board meeting.
What,
It's the same day, same as this date,
It would be
28th.
the fourth Wednesday, which is
The 28th.
March 28th.
so I had asked before, because I travel for work now, and I'm in Augusta, Georgia, doing training at a hospital. So if it's possible, like, could I have someone maybe bring a laptop and I could, like, Skype or FaceTime with you guys or something?
Unfortunately, we've entertained that, and I don't think that video conferencing would be a realistic solution at this time. We are exploring additional technology functions here in
'Cause
council
I have
chambers, but
WebEx.
that's not something that we have talked about. We're not ready to do that here at the city. If you are not able to make it in March, then the next meeting would be in April, but that would require re-advertising for the meeting to inform the public of the item to be heard at that time.
I'm not sure that this is an option, but I just will throw it out. Could she have a proxy show? I mean, to my knowledge, there's no requirement for applicants to actually be physically present when hearing.
That's correct. She could send an
So
agent or representative.
If you can come to agreement with the staff, and then when staff is here, if you have a proxy, or if you don't have anyone here, and you're comfortable with what staff is going to tell us, then I think that works, I think.
Yes, it's possible that you could agree with staff with the next presentation that goes before the board, and you don't need to be here for the item to be heard. But if the board has any questions for you, you wouldn't be able to answer them, and if they wanted to deny it, you wouldn't have any ability to withdraw or comment or give feedback at that time.
What time is it on the 20th? At 6? Okay. I will attempt to see if I can get here. Maybe I can fly home in the afternoon and then fly back in the morning and see what I can at least try to make it. If not, I'll get someone to come for me and stand in.
Yes, I'll make the motion and to table this item, variance, what is the number here? 2-2018, yep, until the following meeting to provide time for the applicant and staff to arrive at a different solution.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Yes?
Alternate Member Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Alternate Member Smith Rodriguez.
All right. So
Okay.
y'all got something to do.
Thank
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to variance number 3-2018, 43 Linwood Avenue. Staff?
Our application before you tonight is for 43 Linwood Avenue. Again, variance number 3-2018. This is an application request to allow an attached screen porch to be located in the rear yard setback for an attached screen porch, for an accessory structure that's attached to the building. Again, the property has a future land use of low-density residential. The zoning is single-family medium density, which is R1B, and all of the properties surrounding are also R1B, except for one property to the east, which has a multifamily R3 zoning to it. The lot characteristics: the lot conforms to the minimum standards of the R1B zoning district. The lot is rectangular in shape with 95 feet of frontage, at which the minimum is 75 feet, and a 90-foot deep for approximately 8,550 square feet, which exceeds the minimum for that zoning district. I won't read the powers of the Board of Adjustment. I did that in a previous case, and I'll just summarize or read through the analysis here. So the applicant is requesting a variance to construct an attached screen porch in the rear yard. The addition will encroach about 2.4 feet into the rear yard setback for the porch. A portion of the easement in the rear yard was vacated by a resolution that was approved in 2017. So I'll illustrate on a survey that there was a easement in the backyard. The applicant went through a process to vacate a portion of that, anticipating having to go forward and get a permit to put this structure attached to the house. That was done, so they do not have to deal with that easement in the back there now. So tonight they're just trying to deal with a variance to allow a 12-foot deep attached screen porch to the building. The home was constructed in 1962. The house meets this front and side setbacks in the R1B zoning. The house appears to be located 23.8 feet from the rear setback, which is less than the minimum required for a principal structure. Now, when we looked at surveys back in the 1980s, I believe, or I'm sorry, in 1968, the house was constructed with an attached screen porch at 25 feet. So it met the setback. So I believe what happened was the attached screen porch or the patio area rather, was enclosed. And I believe then, because of the wall construction, and there was just a new measurement based from a new surveyor today that shows it now, the principal structure now encroaching a little bit into the rear yard setback for the house. An attached screen porch must maintain a 15-foot rear yard setback. The proposed screen porch addition will encroach 2.4 feet into that setback. Approval of the variance will leave a rear yard setback of 11.8 feet. A portion of the rear yard easement was vacated, and that I've already brought up. So the purpose of the rear yard setback, we believe, is to maintain the same scale of development in the neighborhood. The attached porch can be relocated to another area in the rear yard, potentially aligning the addition with the rear building wall. I did visit the structure in the rear yard with the applicant, and it was indicated to me that the other locations that were proposed to put this attachment addition were not going to be feasible because of the way the rooms are laid out inside the house. The applicant has beneficial use of the property without the additional screen porch. There was an original screen porch, but it was enclosed in 1973, so now the property owner is asking for a new screen porch, but it's requiring a variance. Again, we can't consider who the property owners are. We have to look at the site and the property and the configurations of that property only. That's the only way we can look at it. So we recommend denial of the variance request to encroach into the rear yard setback for an attached screen porch. There are no special conditions or circumstances that are peculiar to the land that prevent the applicant from meeting the literal intent of the code. Again, there was a screen porch there in 73. The variance is not the minimum necessary to make possible reasonable use of the land. The addition can be relocated to another area of the rear yard without encroaching into the rear yard setback. Now, I did do some additional analysis after submitting this to you. And I have not given this to the benefit of the applicant to see, but I'll bring this up. Again, the porch is being proposed to be 12 feet deep. The applicant can reduce the porch about 4 feet, leaving about, if they left the porch to be about 8.8 feet in deep, it can be located at that setback without a variance. However, there is another option in the code that the applicant could possibly use. If the applicant could reduce the porch a little bit and leaving a depth of only 9.8 feet for the porch itself, that would require that would allow the applicant to ask for an administrative waiver without having to go to the Board of Adjustment, because now they're only asking for 1 foot of encroachment into that rear yard setback. So it's really, I believe, incumbent upon the applicant to consider whether a 9.8 foot deep screen porch is okay as opposed to a 12 foot deep one, which is requiring a variance here tonight. So it's something we could negotiate or talk about with the applicant. I did bring this possibility up that there was this other option, but the applicant will have to answer the question as to whether that's feasible or not. Going back to the application, I'm just going to point you to the survey. So on page 76 of your packet, you'll see the survey that was submitted to us with the proposed screen porch drawn on it. You can see on the top portion of the page is the road, the driveway, and then in the middle of the property is the building. And you'll see that the screen porch is being proposed 23 feet wide and 12 feet deep. And you see it partially encroaches into an easement, which again has already been vacated. We did ask the applicant about putting it over to the other part of the property on the right side in the backyard there. There's some space. The applicant indicated that there are bedrooms there and even a kitchen, and so there's really no way to provide even egress to that area if the porch was added there. So the question is 12 feet necessary or can it be reduced? And we found that there was an option, so that's why we recommended denial. We didn't believe it was a minimum variance. I did include the setback requirements on page 77 of your packet for that zoning district. And the accessory structure setback requirements of the code are included in page 80 of your packet. And you will see that in table 1 there, the first table, rear yard setbacks, on page 80 of your packet, attached screen porches are required to be 15 feet in the R1B zoning district. So that's where we're getting this standard from. There was one photograph I included on page, I believe it's 83 of your packet, and that's the one I took when I met with the applicant, and that's the backyard. On page 84 of your packet is the 1967 survey that I mentioned earlier, or 1963 survey. And so you can see the original patio back there. That's been enclosed already. And with that, I'll try and answer any questions you have about this application.
So this revision you spoke of, you haven't spoken with the applicant yet about the 9.6, or have you?
I mentioned that there was an option if they considered reducing the size of the porch when I met with the applicant at the property. I did not get into specifics as to what that dimension would be. It was after the fact that I told them that I would try to do some measurements, and this is what I'm presenting you tonight.
Okay. Is there only one door or outlet along that 31.5 feet? I'm looking at the back of the house where the proposed porch would be. I assume there's just one door or something there that would flow to this screen porch. I mean, the picture you took shows a piece of a door, it looks like. Or is that a window?
Okay, I apologize. That's page 80 of your packet?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. The photograph that I took?
Yeah, this color one here.
Okay. Yeah, that is...
83, or 80
Yeah.
something, I don't know.
The picture I took of the backyard there, that looks like a sliding glass door. I'll have to ask the applicant to clarify, but that's a back door, it looks like, back of the residence. And I believe that's the location of where the original patio was that was enclosed. So that's the room addition.
Okay,
The applicant can clarify that, though.
thank you. All right. Y'all got lots of papers for us to look at this time. This one's smaller than the last one, but, yeah. Did anyone else come up with a question at this point? No? Ready to open up public then? All right, this time we'll open up the public, and do we have a card submitted, please?
Roy Floss.
Welcome, sir. And again, if you'd have your name and your address for the record, please, sir.
Roy Floss, 43 Linwood. Yeah, that was the only rear entrance to the house, was a sliding glass door.
Okay.
And I tried to follow along. I don't think there was any other questions that was on it.
Well, did you understand what staff was talking about?
Yeah.
Instead of going 12, going 9.6, and possibly, as I see it, make it maybe longer this way?
I did look into that, kind of like I told him. It was, 9 foot wide if I would stay within, before doing that. Seemed to be a little narrow, but the original objective was to try to get a 12-foot wide porch back there, and I just figured I'd go down this path, just see what I'd be able to get. And if I was unable to achieve that, then I'd have to figure other things out. We'd have to talk with them and see what else we can do.
Okay.
I'd just like to ask the applicant if 9.8 feet is wide enough to suffice for as a screen porch or not. And if not, then I guess it's incumbent upon the applicant whether they want to allow you to ask you for you to go forward with your decision or not.
It sounds to me that if that's sufficient for you, then then there is no variance required. Is that correct? I mean, you could do, I think, Brad, didn't you mention that could be an administratively done? That extra foot?
There is a process. The code does allow administrative waivers for variances of 10% of a side yard setback or rear yard setback, things like that nature, or 1 foot, whichever is less. So there is an application that has to be submitted to us, and it has to be reviewed by the administrator of the code. I believe that there's a good possibility this could be approved by the administrator. It would only be up to a maximum of 1 foot in this particular case. And so based on my measurements, I'm estimating about that would leave a attached screen porch of 9.8 feet deep.
So it's a decision for you if you wish to basically be 10 foot instead of 12.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like explain to him, kind of like just, swing for the fences and see what I can get, kind of type thing. Just as far as if I could, I already paid in my money for the variance, so
Okay.
it's not like it's a refund thing. So it's
All right.
so I just figured I'd see what I could. If it's not, then I could try the other avenues and see what.
There's no objection. I mean, if we'd say, should we vote no, there's no, he can still have that option that you spoke of coming back to you for, correct? There's
I mean, it did
there's
the
no
op-
restriction.
It is a separate process.
Yeah, separate
So,
process.
yeah.
So it's not, no.
Yeah.
So it doesn't hold it up and say, no, it's
Yeah,
out of the
yeah.
question. Okay.
Now, however, if the board is inclined to work with the applicant to reduce this down to a different dimension and approve a variance that way, that you have that right as well. So right now, the request is a maximum of 12 feet.
Yes.
So.
All right. Are there any more questions of this witness? Well, thank you very much, sir. Any other cards?
No, sir.
All right. Then we will close the public hearing and bring this back. If there are any other questions for staff or pages to be looked at? I see none, so I will entertain a motion.
I do have a question.
Of
If it-
staff or?
Of staff.
Okay.
If the porch is reduced to this goal of 9.8 with the administrative waiver of a foot, right? Can it be longer? Is there space for it to be a longer porch as opposed to a wider porch?
Right now, the width of it, I guess the length of it, right, it's 23 feet is what they're proposing
like
on
it,
here.
yeah.
Are you suggesting making it that area?
Is that the length of the wall? Is that why it's 23 feet?
It looks like that's not the length of the entire wall back there. It looks like what's being drawn here, it looks like the entire length of that back wall there is 31 and a half feet.
Yeah, with this 12-foot gap over here?
Right, I think the applicant would have to answer what that is. It looks, maybe it's a stoop or something that they're proposing there.
Okay. May I ask the applicant to approve?
Please.
That was just a rough figure I just kind of came up with as far as just, it didn't need it to be the whole width of the back property, just,
So there's space available to make it longer?
Yes.
Than 23 feet,
yes.
in this case? Okay.
She was concerned about an air conditioner or a window or
No.
something like that, trying to block it off, but there's not anything there. Okay, thank you.
Then I'll make a motion
Find the number, yeah.
to deny the variance 3-2018 on the basis of it's not the minimum variance, the minimum needed for the variance.
Okay, have a motion, do I have a second? And we have a second. May we have roll call, please?
Member Johnson?
Yes?
Alternate Member Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Alternate Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes. Okay, so you were denied the 12 feet, so, all right. Thank you, sir. All right. Okay, that takes care of that. I see no one here for petitions and requests from the public. So I see we have a semi-annual report to be turned into City Council. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We didn't do much, did we?
We try to keep things from coming to the board if we can.
Yeah, simplified.
Yeah, okay. Does anyone see any differences or anything that we need? Thank you. Well, as we said earlier, we still have one opening available. Anybody wants to come join us, we'll be happy to have you fill out for an application. I believe they're online at the city's website, and they're all over the place.
That's correct, sir, but you know, they need to qualify as one of
Yes.
those professions, and I'll read them for the good of the public listening, that you must be one of the following in order to fill the regular position vacancy, which would be a licensed architect, a licensed engineer, a licensed landscape architect, a licensed surveyor, a general contractor, a building contractor, a person associated with the building trades industries, a person having an education degree, bachelor or master degree in urban planning, a person with a current American Institute of Certified Planner certification, a person with a minimum of 10 years experience in land development, and a person with a minimum of 10 years experience in urban planning field, because the positions for the public at large are currently filled.
Very specific qualifications. But if you meet those qualifications, please go to the site and fill in an application, or stop by and see us at City Hall. Thank you.